Council special call meeting, our budget workshop retreat. And those of you who are still finishing dinner, go right ahead and finish. The agenda is in front of you. Anyone have anything they'd like to change in this agenda? If not, we will go right into our financial condition of the city this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Gold, members of the City Council, thank you for joining us for the 2021 edition of our budget workshop and retreat. We'll spend this evening, as we always do, going through our financial condition of the city just to lay the groundwork so that council is aware of where we have been and where we think we're going, not only this year but in the future years, again, to kind of lay the groundwork for tomorrow. After this evening, then tomorrow we'll reconvene at 8:30 and spend some time in the morning talking about an exercise, performing an exercise to establish core values for our organization. I think that's an important. We've developed our own mission and vision statements and goals, and we think that the next step is those core values. Particularly now that our city council is, the new city council's got a year under your belt, so I think it's important that we go ahead and establish core values, and I'm proud of the work that we're doing together. And then the second half of tomorrow morning is we'll just go through some big, audacious ideas, things that city council members have expressed and shared with us, and we'll go through that and give you just time to talk about them as a council, and helps out priorities going. So we're excited for tonight and tomorrow, and doing things a little bit different. 2020 was different, and the first part of 21 is going to be different too, but we hope, we're optimistic that this time next year we will be meeting at a different location, and we'll all be together with staff and doing our retreat like we were normally doing. So we're excited and optimistic about that. So at this point I'll stop and turn it over to Mr. Pauly, who will kick off the financial piece, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you. Adam and myself will be presenting a lot tonight, with John jumping in with us. You know, we talked about 3 meetings in 1 week is difficult, and it's always difficult to do a financial presentation after Mike Huffman presents on stormwater. Especially with what we're proposing today for a presentation style, we're going out on a limb here, and Mike has really set us up for failure, I think. So, Mike did a really good job last night, and we appreciate his presentation. I also appreciate the auditor's presentation. They're pretty good, so we're going to dive a little deeper into some of that information tonight. And also just want to say thanks to John Buchanan, Crystal Powell, and their team upstairs. They've done a great job with our finances, and you know, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago we had the new auditors, and the letter we got from the auditors was like 4 or 5 pages long with stuff we needed to work on. It's a little more than a page now, and they're mostly just oral communications about things to be aware of coming in the future. So big kudos to our finance department. Huge thank you to them. They do a ton of great work for the city. Going out on a limb, tonight we are going to present kind of in a variety of fashions. The most part of it is going to be in a program called Power BI. These are dashboards that are tied into the back-end data of our financial systems, and it's live data. So when we present tonight, we'll be able to publish a link that the public look at, and we'll be able to update the data once the data becomes live. So hopefully this will increase transparency. This is also a program that will work well for things like stormwater. If we want to be tracking what's going on in the stormwater system and we want to present it to our stakeholders, this is a program that can do that for us. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to do my best. We'll be able to zoom in, zoom out, toggle different dashboard items, and talk about the budget and our finances. So to start us off, last year we started off talking about accomplishments. I'm not going to go through all of our accomplishments, but I'm going to highlight some of our goals that we spoke about. Our 6 focus areas. So if you recall, our focus areas are economic vitality, financial sustainability, great public services, numerous amenities, sound infrastructure, and strong partnerships. So right now, if a member of the public, when we post this, wants to go in and look what we did for financial sustainability, they can see those accomplishments will update and the goals will update. So just really quickly, starting with economic vitality, I'm going to hope this works here. And we're going to focus in on goals and zoom in. And so the goals that were established from last year's retreat for economic vitality were attainable housing, a downtown master plan, expanding Main Street infrastructure, supporting economic development with utility infrastructure, a lower unhoused population, higher density, 2 large economic development projects, an example would be Sierra Nevada, and a low tax rate. I think, we can all talk to that in the coming days too of how we're doing. I think we're doing very well here. And those are our goals for economic vitality.
Ron, if I can say one thing,
Yes, sir.
as we said these last year, I don't think we had any idea what March was going to bring, right? So,
I don't think we did either. I think it's great, the economic development project on Upper Road and our tax rate sitting at 49 cents, which is much lower than our peers. Jumping into financial sustainability, other revenue options, we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight, and different revenue options outside of the property tax. A strong fund balance, we'll also get on that tonight. City facility sustainability plan, stormwater rates, talked about that last night, and solid waste sustainability plan. Looking into great public services, please stop me if I'm going too quick. Talk about competitive employee benefits. 2 years ago, we did the 50% health insurance premium offering for dependents within the city. We've also started a pay and classification study this year. That was put on hold. We've done a couple phases of it. You'll hear more about that study in March at our workshop. We're going to talk about the council's pay philosophy and where we want to be in the region, in the state, and in the nation as a competitor for competitive benefits. We also talked about 401k match that ranked very highly after the retreat. And we've also heard various other fringe benefits and other areas we can improve our benefits for our employees. So again, that continues to be a top priority, and we'll talk more about that tonight, tomorrow, and next month. We talked about fire protection, increased police presence, sustainability, meaning less plastic, recycling, solar options, composting, and no styrofoam. Customer service renovations, so this one's been a long time on the list, starting with the police department project and moving PD out of the building. Again, when we have in-person interactions again, having a nice, welcoming customer service focused City Hall. Transparent development regulations, safety, and high levels of service. For numerous amenities, the goals established include park improvements, park playground, splash pad, tree canopy, 7th Avenue phases 2 and 3, acoustic trail expansion, greenway parking, and Whitmire building improvements. A lot of parks related items there. For sound infrastructure, we talked about public transportation, walkability with sidewalks throughout, 0 sanitary sewer overflows. That is an ambitious one, and we are working on that. Stormwater improvements, expanding the greenway system, excellent water quality, fire station number 3, Main Street avenues, parking solutions, solar panels on city facilities, and urban revitalization areas and fiber throughout the city. I think some of these will be talked about tomorrow as well. And then lastly, under the strong partnerships, we talked about our development assistance department. We talked about unified water and sewer rates, partnerships with the county, increased community participation, hands-on museum, ETJ discussions, homelessness assistance, Highway 64 maintenance and beautification, local government internships, Blue Ridge Community College, local universities, and Henderson County Public Schools, and Zero Hungry Children, and lastly, a cohesive council. So those were our goals. That's what we talked about last year, and that's what guided the budget development and the budget development process. This go around, we're going to have, like John said, some opportunities to refine these, and then also kind of focus on the council's values in the next couple days. John, do you have anything to add before we jump into the fun financial stuff?
I think I'm ready to jump into the fun financial stuff.
Fun financial stuff, that's right. All right, so really quickly, again, one thing I do want to highlight is the population. And John, I do want to have you talk a little bit about the demographic data you heard earlier. But you can see on this chart here, and I'll focus in on that one, our population's been growing over the past 10 years. We're up around 14.3 thousand people, and you can see upticks and percentage increases, and we're working with development assistants, talking about transparency and talking about tracking data and presenting data. I think some of these upticks relate to housing development, so when we start looking at what's on the boilerplate, we can start kind of forecasting what's going to happen potentially with the city population and demand for services.
Thank you, Brian. Just to hit that point home, we're in the process of developing a map that the council and the public will be able to look at for all the approved developments and housing lots and developments that will be available in the county associated with our utility system. So that's going to help us and help people see where the development's going and what may not be on the ground today, but it's been approved, so you can really look to the future. So it was interesting. I was on Twitter yesterday, and I follow the Carolina demographer at the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill. They put out different blogs from time to time, and yesterday they were talking from the Office of Management and State Budget, put out population projections for all the 100 counties through 2050. And it was interesting, so I obviously went and looked at Henderson County. And so, and I have the real numbers for 2020 to 2030. So our current county population is right around 118,000, and they expect the county population in 2030, that was a 2020 number, the 2030 projection is 133,007 people. So that's an increase of 14,000 people in Henderson County over a 10-year period. That growth rate is 12.2% over that period of time. So if you looked at over 10 years, we're growing. We'll be growing in the county over 1% a year, which is pretty significant growth. Now, I've looked at the same data for the counties around us. Buncombe County is expected to grow at 7%, Transylvania County at 8%, Rutherford County at 5.3%, Polk County 7.4%, and Haywood 7%. So we will be leading this part of the western North Carolina with a growth rate, if things come true. These are projections at 12.2. So I think it shows you, and I think we're seeing it, we're feeling it. If you talk to our community development department, the number of phone calls they're getting from engineers and prospective developers, we're seeing those numbers. They're starting to materialize. So that's important as we go through, as we're doing our planning and looking to the future, and as we develop this year's budget and future budgets, realizing that we think the growth is here, we think it's coming. We don't see anything there's always outside forces that may change that dynamic, but we don't see those at this point. We're going to always keep our eye out for those changes, but I think it's important to see that it looks like Henderson County's, for western North Carolina, is going to be the county that gets the most substantial growth, other than there's a few counties to the farther west. The only county that I saw compared to that 12% is Macon County, and of course they're on the North Georgia boundary. They're on the boundary of Georgia. Folks coming out of Metro Atlanta and that area growing. I just say that there's going to be higher demand on services. I think what you're seeing and hearing is a demand for high quality of life and to provide the balance and to provide the service in the community. I think people have found that Hendersonville is an attractive place to be, and they want to be here. They want to be in the county. Now, all 14,000 of those people are not going to be in Hendersonville, but we will, one way or another, provide service to them, be in the commercial seat. And it'll be interesting to see what parts of the county will absorb that. Where is that growth going to happen? Is it going to happen in the center? Is it going to happen on the northern end? Or it's just going to be interesting to see. So I think you'll hear that theme as we go through the day about the growth in the community, or go through the budget session about things we're trying to be prepared for.
John, if I could add to that, we also do not have a positive natural growth rate here, which means we have a lot more deaths than births every year. So that's all a lot of people moving in. That's including the negative natural growth rate.
So that's a great point, Jerry. that 14,000, so if you look at, that same number, I didn't include it, but, so the positive of that 14,000 is really 19,000 of net migration, and then 5,000 of deaths in the county to get to 14. So, all of that is people coming in, so that's new homes or people buying, I mean, that's, so it is net migration, you're right.
Thank you. And so, a couple of financial tables really quick, and then we're going to turn it over to Adam to let him focus in on water and sewer and talk about the Environmental Services Fund, our solid waste service, and then we're going to tie it back out with the general fund at the end. So the financial summary tables, and what this page is showing is a typical summary table that we would show in our budget presentations. However, we built it out that you can go back. We need to get more data in here, but you can get 18, 19, 19, 20, and 20 all in here for all our different funds, and with some narrative to explain what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on 1920. I might jump into 2021 a little bit, and then we can talk a little bit about 2022, the budget we're preparing for at the back end of this. So let me just zoom in on some numbers for us. So this is the general fund, and this is for 1920. So this is the audit you received last night. To dive a little deeper, we've got our categories here on the left, which are our revenue sources, our expenditure types, our other financing sources, so it's what is considered below the line in the audit, not typical operating, not typical expense. Net change in fund balance, our fund balance to start the year and our fund balance to end the year. So that's your rows. Across the top, you have your requested data. We don't have that for last year in there. You have your adopted budget data, revised budget. So throughout the year, you may amend the budget for different reasons, and this is recorded and then finalized and captured in the audit at the year end. You have the estimate. So this is what Adam and I work to really refine. At the beginning of every year, we show you, here's what you're adopting, but here's really where, based on historical numbers, where we think we're going to be. We're not going to spend all our expenses budget. We're going to spend maybe 97% in certain funds, maybe less in others. In a revenue standpoint, we typically are a little conservative, and we know probably at the end of the year we're going to come in 3% higher on revenues. So you have your adopted and your estimate for the year. So I think it's important for us to always go back and look at this to see if what is actually somewhat near accurate, because you wouldn't want to listen to us if we weren't near accurate. So we try our best to be, but I think it's always important in the process to go back and check your work and see how you did. So, yes ma'am.
Is this the 2020, or which year is
This is 1920. Yes ma'am, this is the audit from last night. So, fiscal year, you have July 1st adoption, June 30th, 20, finish of the year. So you can see our actual column. So our property taxes, actual collection for all our property taxes was $10.5 million. And what you're seeing on the dollar change and the percent change is actual compared to the estimate. Again, this is what we want to pay attention to. So total revenues, bottom line, we thought we might be around 16.9 million. You adopted one that was 16.95. We ended at 17.3. So we came in over the estimate by about 1.84%. These certain areas did better than others, some less than others. So the strong area for us is sales tax here, and we'll share that with you later on in the presentation. On the expenditure side, our departments did a really good job, you saw last night, maintaining their budgets. And when we put that hiring freeze in place, or not hiring, well, hiring and purchasing freeze in place in March and April when the pandemic hit, they did a very good job of maintaining services and not spending like they would. So you can see we estimated total spending would come in around 16.4 million. Actual spending came in at 16.4 million. So we were about 0.35% off on our estimate there. So overall, the budget hit where we thought it would. You didn't overspend in any major categories, and it was a good fiscal year overall. We ended up net change in fund balance. We increased by $1.1 million. So we started the year at 17.37, and we ended 5 million. And we'll talk more about fund balance as we go through the day. Any questions on the summary table, I'm gonna shoot through a couple more funds and then we'll turn it over to Adam. The Main Street MSD Fund. Get this. So the Main Street MSD Fund, again, did very well. We thought, we were a little worried about fund balance in these funds. However, the reorganization of the Community Development Department actually provides some salary relief for the Main Street and 7th Avenue funds. And you'll see when we come to the budget this year, you'll have some flexibility for what you do with those programs. And Jamie Carpenter and Lou are working on those budgets for us now. At the end of the year, the Main Street MSD Fund appropriated $9,000 in fund balance, starting the year at $87,000 and ending the year at $77,000. We thought we were going to be, we appropriated 70 to start the year. So the fact that we still had a transfer out that actually went towards a portion of the Main Street restroom project, we still ended up ending the year at 9,000. So this other financing sources and uses, this is non-typical operating expense or revenues. That 79,000, that's a large number for this fund. If you just look at our revenues compared to our expenditures, 581,000 in revenue, 512,000 in normal operating. So this fund is in good shape, and you'll have some flexibility going into the next budget year. Similarly, we're going to move on to 7th Avenue. You can see 7th Avenue for the actual year, $83,000 in revenue. 7th Avenue is a little unique. It generates less property tax value than it generates from sales tax appropriations from the general fund. So sales tax is a big driver of this fund. That can be viewed as a good or a bad thing. If we have a bad sales tax year, this fund gets hit just equally as hard as other funds. So it is a little more susceptible to elastic revenue sources like sales tax. On the personnel and benefits side, you see most of the costs in operating and personnel costs. Running the farmers market event this year was an increase in those costs for this fund. And then lastly, it increased its fund balance by about $20,000. Started the year at $90,000 at $109,000. So 7th Avenue is in great shape. It has money to spare here, and it can probably, if there's a certain capital project or something that needs to happen down in that area, Jamie and Lou are working on developing that budget and how they want to use that fund balance.
Are those two funds going to be merged the way the committees have been merged, or are they still going to be separate?
So the funds are separate, and that's due to the districts, MSD districts. If council wanted to, at some point, combine the districts, you'd have to connect them. They would have to have a line, their lines would have to connect, and right now you can't really do that unless you went down Maple and 5th, or somehow across 7th Avenue and 6th Avenue. And you'd incorporate those businesses. It would require all the petitions and the vote and all of that action to combine the districts and combine the funds.
So MSD has to be contiguous?
Yes. And the funds the property taxes have to stay in that district, so yeah, you'd have to find a way to connect them somehow physically.
Yeah, connect them and then equalize, obviously you would equalize the tax rates. You couldn't have part of the district couldn't be one rate, another, it'd have to be one contiguous district.
That's right. So looking into the water and sewer fund, you can see revenues came in at $15 million. I think what you're going to see here is the shutdowns in March and April had more significant impacts on the water sewer fund than the other funds in our city government. So we're still looking into the full extent of those shutdowns and what might have happened with, the hotel industry and the businesses and small businesses, restaurants that might not be using the same amount of water that they would be in the past. So this fund did well this year, and what you'll see when Adam talks about the rate covenants, we've met our covenants and we're in good financial shape, but this is one we got to focus on, and we got that rate study because we got a big pile of capital projects coming down the pipe. No pun intended there. So let's see here. We also had proceeds, you see the $6.2 million is for the Etowah project, the revenue bond associated with that project was accounted for in here, and you'd also see it in the expenditures bottom line. And ultimately, you ended up with a fund balance appropriation, so you spent that fund balance down by $713,000, starting at $8.8 million and ending the year at $8.1 million.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Schools pay for their water and sewer, right?
They do.
Right, that might be part of the explanation.
They pay the same, and they also are equalized, so they pay the same rate inside.
Yeah.
From the,
That's a good point, Jerry. Brian and I were kind of hypothesizing why the water and sewer revenue was down. And we talked about hotels and laundries but we didn't even think about the schools. I didn't think about the schools, and we talked about restaurants,
yeah. And I think one thing too, when you think about the water and sewer system as a whole as well, you think about the industry that's in the county that are water users and that they stayed open predominantly, it seemed, throughout the pandemic. So I think that's a benefit to the system as a whole, is how diversified our system base of customers is.
and another piece that, the businesses in town, people went home to work, and there's such a large population outside the city. We'll particularly see this in the sewer side. People were not at their businesses in town, so they were at home and they may be on septic tanks versus they're using the water, but they may not be using the sewer. So.
Well, and even like a 50% reduction in capacity in a business is 50% less everything.
Yeah.
Well, like at the high school and at the middle school, all the water fountains are covered this year. Like you can't get water at any water fountain. Not that, kids will be doing the some, but they were all covered up last year and haven't been used, I guess, since last March.
Yeah, so this is an important area for us, and just very important that we focus on getting the rates right this year so we can maintain that rate coverage. Looking at environmental services, the revenue totaled $1.2 million. This is mostly charges for service for residential and commercial services for solid waste and recycling. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Adam's about to hit it in much more detail. Like I said, you're going to get a variety tonight. You're going to get like a traditional PowerPoint as well. So if this isn't as good, we've got another option. And then we also had total expenditure $5 million. A big piece of this was a solid waste truck. And you can see the debt proceeds for that truck recorded below the line. Ultimately, there was a net change in fund balance of $51,000 appropriated. The trend in this fund over the years is the fund balance has been decreasing. We're still at an okay level at $242,000, but Adam will talk more about that and what we need to do with this fund going forward just in a moment.
What was the total revenue?
Total revenue is $1.25 million. Yes, sir. And stormwater, ending it off here.
Can I ask you another question about the program we're looking at? Are all of these numbers entered by people, or are they tied into purchase orders that are happening when they cut the checks each week? Like you mentioned, all this stuff was tied together. Is it tied into the financing department, so when they clear a bunch of checks, automatically these numbers start to change?
Yes, ultimately, that's the warehouse that we have built now. Unfortunately, our IT team didn't have it done yet, so we were building in some of the data manually. So, but ultimately, what you will have and what the public will have access to with this, which I think is great, is live data that's posted weekly in our financial system.
Almost like real time?
Yes. And so lastly, the Stormwater Fund, the total charges for service, the actual received was $378,000. The total cost in this fund was $529,000. Again, part of this included a street sweeper, so you see that $226,000 in debt proceeds. The bottom line was an increase of $75,000 in its fund balance, ending the year at about $200,000 in fund balance. So we'll talk a little bit more. This fund this year had a good deal of money budgeted for capital projects, and you saw some of that good work that Mike was doing last night. We'll continue to evaluate kind of where that rate model goes and what projects start coming into the hopper and start being designed, just like your water and sewer fund. summary tables. We can spend more time on these later if we'd like. At this point, I'm going to hop over and do a quick look at some of just broad financial details. What you're seeing in the top left, this is just total actual expenditures and adopted requests. So this shows you our full list just in a line graph over the 3 years. And this is filtered by fiscal year, fund, and category. So this is revenues for the general fund for 1920. This one's actually not tied to that fiscal year filter, but you can see the trend line of the revenues for the general fund based on budget and actuals. This pie chart in the bottom left, this is the breakdown by each fund makes up of the total budget. So you can see the general fund is about 48% of our total budget funds. Main Street's about 1.6%. Seventh is even smaller, I can't even see it, it's 0.23%. Water and sewer is 45.5%. Environmental services 3.5%, and stormwater is at 1% of our total budget. That was for the 1920 year actuals. That's total $36 million. So when we start looking at fund, so these two filters are fund specific. So this is just showing your end of year fund balance over 2 years for the general fund. And then this is also your actual spend by category for your revenue types. So, well, maybe I can't get to that one. So ultimately, ad valorem taxes make up 60% of our total revenue fund budget. Other taxes and licenses, a very small amount. Unrestricted intergovernmental, this represents mostly, it's going to have electricity sales taxes, pipe natural gas, telecom sales, video programming, and a few other unrestricted, but mostly this is sales tax. That's about 30% of the total budget.
Would you mind toggling to the 1819?
Yes. In 1819, so property taxes was 57%.
Okay.
And you can tell, so that's revaluation. It increased our share of ad valorem taxes pretty significantly.
So I just have a question too. So there's, my husband was telling me about House Bill 119. You guys know about this?
This is the property tax forgiveness one?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a problem?
It would be
Massive.
significantly challenging, yes.
Big, right? Okay.
Yes. It is.
Because most of the businesses are in Hendersonville, right?
Yeah.
So particularly the hotels and the restaurants and those kind of things, it would most likely be requesting that property tax base. So it would have a dramatic effect on our property tax.
It's a significant chunk of money, $10.5 million for 1920, even more for 21. And without that, we really don't have other options for generating revenue. It's property tax rule of government. So if we had other options, that'd be very helpful, and maybe we could sustain something like that for a short period of time. But the property tax is direly needed.
Just isn't
hanging out here, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, can y'all tell us what
Sorry,
this House bill
sorry.
says?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
John, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So there's a bill that I think's been filed by a lot of the hotel, motel, restaurant folks lobby to basically allow businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic to, for a short period of time, to request basically extensions on their property tax, basically not have to pay it, and then they can set up payment plans over 12 or 24 month period. I haven't seen the final bill, but that's what I
Well, in
was.
2019, they're actually allowed to request a refund for what they paid
Okay.
altogether in 19, and then turn around and convert that back into a loan.
Okay, because it's just now come out in the last week or so that they basically allow them to get their property tax back, and then.
Ooh. Not only this fiscal year, but last fiscal year.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Great point.
Debbie Downer.
That's what financial people are here for. Debbie Downers, right? And then you can see the expenditures by category or by type for the general fund. And you can see personnel and benefits being the main driver for the general fund, about 61%. operating around 26. And then capital and debt service smaller in the general fund, but still a good chunk of change for our budget. We'll reset the revenue. Main Street is going to be very similar to the general fund. The miscellaneous income is mostly events type revenue. 7th Avenue is going to be a little different. It's going to be much more reliant, like I said earlier, on that sales tax dollar for 7th Avenue. Hopping back to Main Street and looking at their expenditures, it's mostly operating expenses. It's typically our contracts for our downtown maintenance, pressure washing, landscaping, tree trimming, things like that. Personnel benefits a lot smaller percentage.
Also, I have a question about the top left,
Yes.
because I'm enjoying watching that one move around. So, just so I know, the yellow is when department heads come to you to make their request.
That's right.
The blue is when you send them back and say, no, try it again.
No, so the request, I should reorder this. So yellow requested, that's stage 1. There's a middle step that we have not shown here, but then the final step is adopted. So it goes requested, adopted, revised, estimate, actual. And it's going to reflect the summary tables here.
Yeah, okay.
So these ones are actually in order for us.
Oh, it's just those.
Yeah.
It's just the same things you had there. I
Yeah,
got you.
just showing it over.
So can you explain that again, then? Requested?
Requested is what they request, right?
Got you.
There's a step in between where what we're in right now, working with the department heads and refining the budget, and then ultimately we bring you a proposal, and then we come back and adopt something in June.
Okay.
And that's the adopted. So we're cut out some of the middle process there, we don't think we need to show all those steps in
Right.
here. But from what's requested to adopted to revise, so revise is after adoption, July 1st starts, and we say, we missed something, or we decide, hey, a great project's come up, we want to transfer some money to this project. You, as the board, officially in your capacity, revise the budget, amend the budget, and authorize
So
the
those are the budget amendments we
expenditures.
approved.
That's
the
right,
revised.
yeah. And that's what happens at the end of the year, we're showing you what that revised number is. So you can see where your budget started and where it ended. And then
What's the estimate?
the estimate is what we said, our guess at the beginning. So right when we adopt, we say, we think this, well, when we show you that budget workshop, and we say, okay, here's the budget that we're presenting, here's where we think it's actually going to be at the year.
So how is that different than adopted?
So adopted is going to be probably a little higher than what actually happens.
Okay.
Estimate is just, that's our guess at where the end of the year is, because sometimes, adopting a budget, I don't know if this one is as bad, a fund balance appropriation of $700,000, right? That's what we said we're going to do at the beginning of the year. We know internally we're not going to spend all of that budget, and we know our revenues are probably going to beat our budget. So the estimate is giving you, our goal of providing an estimate is give you a sense of reality when you adopt a budget. So you're not really adopting it and thinking we're going to spend $1 million of our fund balance a year in.
Okay.
Well, that's what you technically authorize, but, John is not going to let that happen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So again, where are we? Main Street expenditures, mostly an operating expense. 7th is going to be very similar. Actually, no, 7th is mostly personnel and benefits, so they're benefiting from having the downtown staff supporting that district. Jump back to revenue, and then we'll close it out with the environmental, or the enterprise funds, water and sewer, all charges for services, completely reliant on those water sales and sewer charges. We do get some money from tax and fees, but this used to be larger when we had system development charges for a business coming in and paying that larger fee to buy into the system. But we did rid of those, so it's mostly charges for service. The expense is a little different on the water and sewer side of the general fund. We're spending a lot more on debt service and capital in this fund. Less on personnel benefits and operating. I think all these numbers can continue to grow, especially with our I&I programs or leak detection programs. To be more personnel out on the streets seeking out those leaks and trying to fix them. Environmental services, it's all charges for service. Expenditures similar, breakout, some capital and debt service, and then mostly personnel. And then lastly, revenue side, all charges for service, and then ultimately, we're hoping to get more capital in there and more personnel in there, but it's broken out right now 30%, 47%. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam. I'm still going to drive over here, so whatever Adam needs me to jump onto, I will. But we're going to start with water and sewer. So we're going to hop down into our water and sewer page.
Thanks for the intro, Brian. Good evening, Mayor Volk, members of the City Council. Good to be here in person with you. I think it's been over a year since I've seen all of you together in a room, so hi again. So this data, this dashboard in Power BI is mostly built off information that's provided in the water sewer annual report that we just published. So on your left, you'll notice a table that has the rates and fees that were adopted with the annual budget. And on the right, you'll notice some of those more statistical information cards that describe what the operations of the water and sewer department look like throughout the year. Looking at this, it looks like Brian has FY19, our most recent completed fiscal year, pulled up. And in this set of data, you'll notice that the rates are set at 150%, so that 1.5 amount for the outside fees for the outside customers that we're still providing service to on the water and sewer side. That's in line with what was adopted. And then in FY21, excuse me, you'll notice that that rate for water specifically is starting to decrease as was adopted by City Council with the annual budget. So that rate differential decreased from 150% to 145% as we decided to explore reducing the rate differential by 5% until equalized. So right now we're holding at 145% until we're further directed to change the rate. We don't have any data yet from the water and sewer department for this year, just because the year obviously has not been completed. So following our next annual, those cards over to your right. But yeah, Brian, you want to click on FY19-20. Some of the important statistics you'll notice here, we are producing 2.5 billion gallons of water each year, and our sewer plant is treating nearly a billion, so 964 million gallons of wastewater. We are responding to 8,000 calls for service each year. Our water loss percentage, so after we produce the water, it goes through the lines, and then we have a billed water amount. That loss in between from cracks, leaks, evaporation, whatever else it is 12% for last year. And then our sewer I&I for FY19-20 was notably higher. So we had a lot of rain events, cracks in pipes, stormwater, things that get into the sewer system lead to higher volumes of sewer that we treat. And that's one of the key points that we're working on going forward.
Adam, can I stop you right there?
Yes, sir.
Right, yeah, great slide. You're going right where I wanted to. So just want to point, Brian pulled up the water loss. So look at your water loss in 17-18 was at 23%, and your sewer I&I was at 34%. So if you come forward there, Brian, and so in both cases we dramatically improved your water loss, which is great, down to 12%. And we dropped your sewer I&I by 4%. We're going in the right direction. We've got the water loss number. I don't know if we're going to get much tighter than that. I think 10% is considered excellent in most systems, but we definitely have some work to do on the I&I, and they're working diligently now to continue to drop that number. So those will be two numbers that the great thing about this program will be to watch it change over time. And hopefully it'll keep going down. Yes, ma'am.
Is that, so is the water loss across the entire system even,
Yes, ma'am.
I think too, like I don't know if anybody subscribes to the Aquahawk alerting thing, but it's really helpful. I mean, for when Enzo leaves, you know, the hose on in the backyard all night and that kind of thing, so. But like, maybe we could just do some more announcements about that service for people.
We'll
It's a
continue
good way
to
to just
publicize it.
keep track on it.
Yeah, from time that we get on a pretty regular basis, people thanking us for that alcohol and people finding leaks and things. So, thank you.
Good, okay. So the last thing that I want to hit on this page is just the bottom right line chart, which has new water and sewer taps each fiscal year. So you'll notice that the blue line is water, so each year dating back to FY 15-16, we are adding approximately 256 to 348 and everywhere within that range customers each year. So more and more people are connecting to the water and sewer system. And on the water side, it's interesting that in FY 19-20, despite COVID, we had 300 people connect to water. So that's just an interesting point there. There was a decrease in the sewer connections that year, and that's mostly inside city connections when we're dealing with sewer taps. So,
Adam,
yeah.
can you jump into the rate covenant?
Was
Yeah.
the huge jump in 17-18 like a planned development or something? Is that why it was so high?
I think it was apartment complex.
Okay.
I think it was, didn't we have a couple of apartment, we had, Cedar Terrace came on about that time, and Brittany, whatever the second day that Brittany, Howard out that way, we had several apartment, complexes come on that year, so, Oklawaha Village, those kind of things. So those taps, maybe not installed, but all ahead of time, so it lagged a little bit. And so I expect to see with some of the development going on now, both those numbers to start shooting back up.
And that's when, those numbers are from when the taps are bought or when they're, so not installed?
Yeah, so there is when they're, we capture when they're bought.
Okay.
And then sometimes there's, like if a developer's doing it, they'll pay for them, and then the developer will then install it and as they need it. So.
And next up, Brian has pulled some information that's also included in the comprehensive annual financial report. This is on our revenue bond that was issued back in December of 2019. So if you all remember, we issued that first revenue bond for almost $13 million, so $12.8, $12.9 million. It cost us about $118,000 to issue that bond, but what we did with it was refinance some existing debt that we had on our AMI system, and then we also funded the Etowah Water Project. So together, those two pieces made up the $12.89 million worth of revenue bond that we collected. The unique thing about the revenue bond is it requires us to meet some additional bond covenants. So we have this big, long packet of legal document that requires us to meet certain mathematic criteria at the end of each year. So this is the first year we've had to meet those, and we did meet the bond covenant requirements. So the top right, the bond rate covenant narrative, you can read through that if you'd like, but essentially what it says is that for Part A, the first calculation, our revenues along with 20% of our surplus fund, which is our fund balance, have to equal A, 100% of our current expenses, B, 120% of the annual principal and interest on specifically the revenue bond, and then also 100% of principal and interest on our other debt. So we met that requirement. We exceeded the minimum requirement by $2.7 million, which is good news. And then on the other side, we are looking at just how our revenues alone, so no fund balance, cover similar requirements. So our revenues alone have to cover 100% of our current expenses, 110% of the annual principal and interest on the revenue bond, and 100% of our annual principal and interest on our other debt. So if you look at the bottom line here, the covenant met the requirement, but it was very, very slim. So we met it by $12,528. So I think the easy conclusion to draw from these two items is that we have a healthy fund balance. Maybe it's safe for us to use that for projects. And we also just want to keep an eye on what our revenues are doing, where our rates are set, just so that revenue requirement in item B, that second table, lead up to that bottom line calculation.
And that key point about the fund balance is that calculation A allows us to incorporate that surplus in our calculation. Calculation B is much more baseline operating, so we got the takeaway for us is we got to make sure those rates are set at the start of the year to cover those baseline operating costs.
That's absolutely right. And thinking back to the financial table that Brian talked us through, you notice that our revenues weren't quite as high as they had trended, just COVID-related factors. So we saw businesses reducing their capacity, withdrawing a little bit in FY 19-20. So that led to this second calculation being a little tighter than we maybe initially expected.
And do both of those have to be 1 or greater?
So the first one, yeah, so the way Brian has this calculated, they would both have to be 1 or greater. But within that, there's more complicated formulas going on. So your revenues plus your fund balance would be,
You know about this,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I won't do the whole thing.
You have a
yeah.
green check because you got
Yeah,
if
we
it's
got
below the 1, you don't get the green
it. Yeah,
check.
we got it.
Make
Yeah.
sad face.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Calculation A is 1.2 for
Okay, all right.
1.0 for calculation.
Don't ask the question if you don't want the answer.
I just want to know if it was a 1. He didn't have to tell me how we got to the 1.
Sorry. So that's really important as we're thinking about our future debt issuances, about our capital projects, more on the debt and larger project side, more so than the operating and smaller project side.
I apologize for this question, John. And how long are we under this requirement for the bond? How many years?
As long as we have the bond, I mean, it's
Long time.
so long
This is
time.
our master indenture, so the more addendums and bonds we issue for projects, we're going to propose a bond. I don't want to steal out of his thunder to get ahead, but there'll be a bond coming this next year. And for
I think it's great,
Or just in bonded?
Yeah, so this, it really is, as Jeff said, it was asking, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jeff, but it's just, so funding our debt load on the utility fund is at a point that that's how we're gonna pay for. We're not gonna do installment purchases, it'll be bonded debt, or some state revolving debt, but we'll have this for going forward forever, and it just keeps us honest.
I'll say it just makes you be so transparent, it's great.
Yeah. But at some point, some bonds are over and I guess you get new bonds, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying? Okay.
We'll have different series of bonds.
Right.
So yeah, right now we're in Series A of the revenue bond, and as we add debt, that'll change to Series B, Series 2020, 2025, whatever you want to call it. So one last thing on the revenue bond. The reason we did this, again, was revenue bonds are the most secure borrowing that an enterprise fund can do. So you are pledging your rates, so your ability to fund any debt. So we receive a really good interest rate on revenue bond issuances. Outside revenue bonds, we do get other funding, so it's funding from the state through SRF loans, funding from the federal government, and those also have good rates. So Brian, if you want to move on to the capital and debt information, we can, I think.
Brian
this is
does a
good
really
transition.
great, I still have like my
Yeah.
chart that you 2 weeks ago. Yeah, Art drew it all out for me, explained it, it's like, I still haven't.
Good.
It was a really good explanation though.
So dude, I love charts. It's like, I can't wait for this
Current
meeting,
charts are like,
because it's new charts every year, and it's ended, and it's just hit this button, and 5 things pop up. It's awesome.
Don't jinx me yet, we're not there tonight.
Great. Well, I'm glad you guys like the charts. Speaking of charts, this one is in front of you. I printed it. I know it can be a little small on the TV, so
Thank you.
I thought it might be helpful to have it. So what this is all of our projects that we either have or plan to issue a capital project ordinance for in the water sewer fund. So these are essentially just all of our large projects that are going to take more than one fiscal year that we're trying to plan out ahead of time. The important takeaways here are that we've completed a few projects, have payments due. There are a bunch of NCDOT projects scattered throughout the list. And then you can also see the Etowah water improvements that we issued that part of that revenue bond for on this list. 2 other projects coming up in next fiscal year that we plan to issue a second revenue bond indenture for. Those would be the church, formerly the Church and King, now just the Church Street Improvements Project. So that's a 2022 series project, and that will be $5.7 million. And then we also have the Clear Creek Interceptor project for $2.1 million. So we're going to lump those 2 projects together, and we intend to issue a second revenue bond for those. Yes, ma'am.
with the significant DOT delays on projects, does that affect?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So we meet quarterly, sometimes more often than that, with the water and sewer staff, with Lee, Adam Sturr, and Brent, and we shift these projects around. So this chart, the timelines are constantly shifting. This one was last updated on January 27th, and it's probably had changes since then.
We just voted today to kind of, to agree to the delay.
Yeah.
And all the tips, even though there was lots of unhappy people voting for it, because basically, and then somebody asked, well, what if we don't vote for it, and then Tristan said that basically all federal projects and federal money would stop, like, immediately.
So, great question, Councilman Hensley. So, Councilman, if you look at the bottom, you see those 3 NCDOT projects. So we have, this chart is regularly updated because those are the ones that keep shifting for us. So, in some ways, it's bad from a from a transportation, but from a financial standpoint of the water and sewer, it gives us some leeway to do some other things that we need to be doing, such as the Mud Creek Interceptor project, those kind of things. It gives us some financial capacity to get to that I goal that council has. So, but we continue to move them around.
And Adam, a couple things I'll add to the DOT projects, payment is not due until the project is completed, and sometimes DOT takes time to bill us for those. So if you think of I-26, our sewer work in water and sewer is pretty much almost done at this point, yet we're not going to get billed till FY24, so there's some benefit there of those projects. Also SRF projects, the state revolving fund projects, payment does not start until project completion as well. So debt service is built in to Adam's model
The
based
whole
on.
project and not just our portion.
Right, yeah, until those projects are complete. The only other thing is to prep y'all for what will come in May is water and sewer. Adam Sturr and Lee Smith and Brent Delwater and their team are working really hard at getting these lined out. I know the wastewater treatment plant master plan is going to have a major impact on a lot of these from a timing perspective. So the Mud Creek Interceptor, some of our UV projects at the plants. Once we get that back, that's going to have significant impacts and may change kind of where these projects fit in on the schedule. So a lot of the sewer projects are still up in there until that wastewater master plan is complete.
Are there any other
Adam, where are we going next?
I was was gonna ask if there were any other questions on the Gantt chart that we can assist with. I think that nearly covers all of the water and sewer related information. So if there's nothing else, I think we can move on to the Environmental Service Fund presentation and talk a little bit more about what's going on there. So I wanted to start with just a slide on what an economic bad is. So I thought Jerry might get a laugh out of that as an economics teacher. So it's just the opposite of an economic good. It's anything that has a negative value. So you pay more to have less of it, and that's
Kind of like pennies.
Yep. So that's what we're doing with our solid waste department. We are taking care of those economic bads. And so to take care of those economic bads, we obviously have to have a budget. And this is just a summary version of what Brian went through on a previous slide that's got some updated information. You can see that we have FY 18-19 actuals. Those are CAFR data, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report data. In that fiscal year, we ended the year collecting $1,254,000 of revenue. We expended $1,380,000, and our bottom line decreased by $125,774. So our fund balance dipped in the Environmental Service Fund that year. The next year, so our most recently completed fiscal year, 1920, we budgeted $1.2 million of revenue again, and we planned $1,663,000. We took out some debt, so that is to pay for a solid waste truck. And then all in all, we planned to end the year appropriating $149,855, but actually spent $51,778. So the fund ended spending slightly less fund balance than we originally expected. Looking at this year, we budgeted, our revised budget, is $1.27 million, and you can see that our expenditures are budgeted at 1.38. So there's a pretty sharp decrease in expenditures from last year to this year, and that's because we're looking at the financial sustainability of the Environmental Service Fund, and we want to be sure that we don't continue this trend of spending fund balance too sharply. So based on our budget, we will expend $110,244 of fund balance. But based on our estimate, so if Brian and I prove true with this Environmental Service Fund, we will spend just $67,137 of fund balance, ending with 103. So the important point here is that over the last few fiscal years, we've been using fund balance in the Environmental Services Fund to help sustain operations. So that's not a financially sustainable practice, and we hope to turn that around, and this is what this Environmental Services presentation is based around, is how we steer the aircraft carrier and change that course. So just wanted to include that summary table, which summarizes trend in fund balance. So in 18-19, we ended the year with $221,000. The next year, $170,000, and then this year we're budgeted at $59,000. But we estimate that we will actually end the year with $103,040 in our fund balance. So again, it's just not a sustainable financial practice, and we can and probably should raise our revenues to try to turn that around.
And we're getting ready to do that, correct?
Sorry, what?
And we're getting ready to do that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes, we are. So the reason for that trend, the rate drivers and the need for additional expenditures are mostly service demands. So, growth in the city can be a very positive thing, and it can also create some challenges in addition to the opportunities. So we've got a growing demand in development. Every time we add a new neighborhood, we have another set of routes, potentially another set of employees, and capital that we have to purchase to provide services to those folks. In the Environmental Service Fund, we are very exposed to the market. So the tipping and disposal fees are very significant costs in the Environmental Service Fund. Right now, we're budgeted at $210,000 in tipping fees, and that's just fees we pay to actually dump all of the solid waste that we go around and collect for people. Some of the things we can do to reduce the cost and help with service demands are study our routes and study our rates. So there is a need for a future route study and other operational type studies that can maybe help us with things like technology, which reduce our costs. We also recognize the need for some critical safety measures. And again, just as we increase routes, we need more vehicles to go service those routes, so we've got debt service costs. And then increasing operating and maintenance costs, so we've got to maintain the vehicles and equip our personnel to take care of the job.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Why are the tipping and disposal fees driven by the market?
So waste is getting increasingly expensive to deal with, and one of the things you may have noticed in the last few years is that China is increasing the cost to accept some of our reusable waste. So,
Or not accepted at all?
right. So it's getting harder for people to process waste that we don't have to keep, and then at a certain point we're going to run out of capacity to store waste in certain places. So it's increasingly expensive to deal with that economic debt. The more you have of it, the more expensive it becomes.
But do the fees, or do they change that much during a year?
The tipping fees?
Yes.
It depends on the disposal site, and it also, we have to drive maybe from, rather than dumping in Henderson County, we could be turned away and have to dump outside in maybe Greenville, South Carolina, or even further away. So
Okay.
Those acceptance sites that take our waste can refuse to take a truck if they would like, but they do get more expensive, and they have their own way of analyzing their costs and managing their supply and demand. Yes, sir. So along the lines of the increasing service demands, we have some data from the Development Assistance Department. So this is just a list that I was provided thanks to all the folks over there in the Development Assistance Department that provided me information on the number of completed units and remaining units for some major development projects that they know are coming. So these are just the projects we're aware of. There could certainly be more that we're not aware of, but all of these would be coming into the city, which means we would provide all of these developments solid waste service. Some of the key projects you'll note are the 2016 approved Claystone project. So there were 31 units approved there. 7 of those have been completed, which means there are 24 remaining that we have to serve. The cottages at Cypress Run are estimated to have 65 units. The Clear Creek subdivision is significant. That will have an estimated 334 housing units that we'll have to serve. The West Avenue Villas will have 10, and the Ivy Crossing project will have 45. So looking at this list, there are a total of 497 remaining units that will be built that we will eventually have to provide sanitation service to. So Brian, if you want to hit the next slide. And this is just our forecast of the existing bins in service, and then it adds on those mentioned developments. So most of the change is in the residential 96 waste and recycling category. You'll notice that we are currently at 3,392 customers there, and slowly growing up to nearly 4,000 customers by FY26. So our total customers are growing, and we will have to provide them service. And if there are any questions about how we get the bin data, I'm happy to answer those as well.
And one thing I'll point out here, so in a couple of slides back, Adam talked about a route study, an efficiency study, and that's something that definitely is going to have to be on our near future, because we're already picking up solid waste 5 days a week, and so there's not another day to add another route, right? So, I mean, I guess we could go on to the weekends, but we need to look at the efficiency of our routes and make sure that that we are being most efficient, and we're sending 3 or 4 trucks, depending on, I guess it's 3 trucks, by all these homes, and is there efficient way that'll help us save on fuel and be more efficient? That'll cut some costs too. So that's important, particularly as we start adding these additional housing units, because the alternative is, if we're not being so efficient, instead of making the routes longer and taking longer day, you have to add trucks and people, which makes it more, which is more expensive than being more efficient. Am I making? So we're going to have to do that study to make sure that we're as efficient as we can be before we add another set of 3 trucks that have to take to serve some of these residences.
Do you have to add 3 trucks at a time?
Well, we probably wouldn't have to add 3, because my guess is, particularly this time of year, the brush truck is not picking up that much stuff. But you would have to add, theoretically, you may have to add at least 1 additional garbage truck and 1 additional
I got it. So you mean garbage, recycling, and brush truck,
Yeah,
right?
those are-
You didn't mean just garbage, right? Okay,
Yeah,
I got you.
that's-
Is there a number, that chart you just had up, is there some number, like when we get X many more people, it's time to start adding more employees or more trucks?
Yeah, so the Public Works Director, Tom Wooten, is tracking that information. So he hasn't set a mark to where exactly we need to be before we are over capacity and need to add that, but he has data available. If I remember his spreadsheet correctly, we are currently sending our folks out. A route is about 27 miles, and each route has its own crew. So they have that data available, and if it's something you'd like to see, I can provide it to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's, Jerry, I think part of the proposal is to take a short-term fix for the financial aspect, start planning, do the master plans, get the studies completed, and then figure out what's that long-term impact, and what do we need to do in the long term to prepare for this.
How are those rates, or how are the routes currently generated? Is that all just like GIS, somebody does that, or you have a computer system that does it?
So my guess is the routes that we have now are probably, and they may have been hand done, may have used early GIS, but I guess the routes haven't changed that much in a number of years, is my guess. So that's why the route study and using new technology to plan the routes and to track how efficient we're being.
and so going a little bit more into the rates, away from looking at the customer accounts and the number of bins that we're servicing. These are just our current rates that were adopted with the budget. So most of our customers are on the residential side, so I'll hit that first. Right now, for a smaller set of residential 32-gallon container with recycling, our customers are paying $16.25. Without that recycling, they're gonna pay $20, so there's actually an incentive to have that recycling. You have to pay a little less if you have recycling. And on the 96-gallon side, our customers with recycling are paying $18.50. Without recycling, they're paying $22, and that's per month. On the commercial side, the rates vary. Not that many commercial customers. We don't offer dumpsters. They're mostly receiving waste service through bins. If they need more, we provide them more bins, but those rates are mostly for bins, and we do charge extra for additional services there. So our current rates are lower for customers with recycling, so we encourage recycling, and it's an additional service that does not have the cost currently covered. And some of our different bin sizes that we have right now, they might lead to some service issues. So we notice from time to time that those with smaller containers have overfilled containers, and that could lead to some issues in environmental quality. So Brian, if you'd like to hit the next slide. What we need to do is cover our total expenditures with our operating revenues. So with those charges that you saw on the last slide for waste pickup, and below the expected operating revenues and total expenditures, you can see a plan for the next 5 fiscal years. So this year we're reviewing the need for a rate change and planning out some strategic items within the Environmental Service Fund. Next year we will need to purchase some capital. We'll have to purchase a solid waste truck replacement. The year after that we'll have to purchase a second solid waste truck to service again that growing customer demand. And then in FY 23-24, our current plan is to fund that comprehensive operational study, so the route study, getting a professional firm to maybe help us with rates and give us a better outside understanding of how to run our operation. So we're proposing right now that we change some rates, but in FY 24-25 we'll alter those rates based on what recommendations come from the study. The pros of following the current plan, we will stabilize our fund balance right now in the short run, and eventually in the long run when we receive further recommendation. We'll simplify our rates slightly, so we'll have a more understandable schedule of rates and fees. We'll have the funds to study and modernize our equipment. We'll be able to cover our debt and capital a little better, and our residential customers will all be enrolled in recycling. There are some cons, so we would reduce our service variety. Again, everybody would be enrolled in recycling. We would need to form a long-term strategy and potentially trade out some bins, but those are minor challenges.
Why would you wait to fund the comprehensive operational study? Why would we wait
So
a couple of years? What's the reasoning on that?
we could move that up. Right now, it's just a matter of what we have to purchase, the essential capital items coming first. So we need those waste trucks to actually get on the routes and make their way around the city to provide the services that we need.
Do you have any idea what that cost is?
For a waste truck?
No, I'm sorry, for the study.
Oh, sorry, for the study. I think most comprehensive studies, similar to the one we're receiving with the stormwater program, are around $100,000.
Jeff, in the short term, we would definitely be doing a route study. So I think Adam, when you're talking about comprehensive study, you're referencing like a full rate study, master plan.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not waiting.
We would be doing a route
The
study,
operational.
efficiency and route study in the short term.
Okay.
And we'll get Mr. Rudin to look into that for next year's budget.
I have a question, that is, if everybody everybody's going to recycling, did everybody's rate just go down?
So that's the next slide. So we're transit. So
No
we,
more, okay.
yeah, right now to stabilize the rates and make everything a little more consistent. If you'll just look at the residential fees down near the bottom of the slide, you'll notice that our recommendation going into next year is going to be to flatten out that differential between those with and without recycling. So the 32-gallon containers, those folks would pay $20, and anybody with a 96-gallon container on the residential side would pay $22. So no increase for anybody that does not have recycling, but they would be receiving a bin, and that differential between recycling and non-recycling would cease to exist. And then there would be some minor changes with commercial fees.
So if all of a sudden everybody just said, well, I'm not gonna recycle anymore, we just pay the tipping fees.
Right.
But we're betting on that they're not gonna do that.
So we have
Because
confidence
most
in our...
people don't even know you get a benefit when you recycle.
Yeah, so most people, when they're signing up, most of the accounts that we have, again, already have that recycling cost.
What's the percentage who choose that option right now, do you know?
We can calculate it. So Brian, if you want to go back to the slide of customers, so those with recycling, so if we looked at just this year, a residential 96-gallon container with waste and recycling, there's 3,392 people, and that's out of the total number of customers of 5,588. So approximately 60% of customers have waste and recycling, which the easy conclusion to draw would be, well, excuse me, it's actually higher than that because there's a smaller container. So
84% all around that.
yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Do we think that keeping that, the rate difference is actually more of an incentive to people though, to participate in the recycling program?
John, do you want to answer that one? So I think having the availability is a good thing. I think if people have the bins, they are obviously more likely to use them. I don't know what level of resistance there is to actually using the bins. Currently we don't have the data to collect information about who's actually using the recycling bins and who's not.
I think most people that are gonna recycle, they're just gonna do it. I mean, they're committed to doing it. And I don't think $2, $4, $3.50 really was the driving factor.
It really is going to be interesting to see what happens to the recycling market over time.
That's
sad.
Yeah.
I'm sad saying that. I know the county has just recently cut out shredded paper. We just got notified that we can no longer recycle shredded paper. So,
Well, a lot of the problem is like when I toured the facility out there and then went on to the transfer stations, they don't even accept half the stuff that you put in. And then the company themselves are not actually recycling the things that you were separating to recycle. And that's where a lot of the problem comes.
so it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of education and a lot of, but it's.
I think you're gonna see more and more towards compostable things and actually having compostable bins and stuff like that. I know the restaurant stuff, some of them, and they're going to compostable, but they're still throwing them in the garbage.
But they break
Until
down.
they can get, will break down. Most of them, well, I know Jerry was talking about what lasted quite a while, but some of them are doing well, but if you actually get compostable separation, then it works well.
I mean, I think the real thing that's got to happen is, this is a federal decision, but there's got to be some government subsidies to entice people to use that recyclable plastic for something. I don't know what it is. I think that's the only choice we're gonna have, because Southeast Asia and China are gonna quit taking it. it's out there, so I don't know how, other than you just put it in a landfill, which I don't think, as you're saying, that's really not a viable option either, because the landfills are filling up.
Yes, sir.
I will say as a side note, when we were in Colorado last week, in Summit County, you cannot go to a grocery store or any type of store and they don't bag your stuff. You check out and they say, do you have a bag? Or you can purchase a bag. Those are your two options. And I think it's awesome. I mean, we always have bags and, you know, if the purchasing of bags is reasonable, then I really feel like that's something we should.
I think that's gonna be as an American public, that's gonna be the other method that we're gonna start.
Yeah, and you just do it, you don't look back, and it's done.
You eliminate, one-use plastic and styrofoam, and you start hitting folks and where it starts hitting them in the pocketbook and makes us change our habits, right? So,
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's gonna hit them in the pocketbook
oh, I know,
somewhere.
either here or if we don't change what we're doing.
And to piggyback on this discussion of rates, if you all want a different direction, this is why we're showing this now, just to give you a taste of one of the options. We could always keep the recycling incentive in place and just increase all rates, but ultimately, those with recycling make up the largest portion, 84% of the total revenue boost, so it's gonna hit them one way or another. We thought just an equalized and provide recycling to everyone was probably the first approach, and that would be our starting point, but again, think on it, and we're gonna have multiple times to talk through this in the budget process.
Historically, how long have we had that?
That dates back, I went through and looked up all the rates back to 2008. I think that differential has existed since we have recorded our budgets online. So I think that's been in existence since fiscal year 2008.
Gotcha. It probably has served its incentivized time.
It's been at varying levels throughout history, but I think it's existed since then. And then finally, I just wanted to provide some comparable municipalities and some of the private hauler firms that are within Henderson County and Buncombe County to show what kind of rates can be expected. So the tricky thing with local governments and their advertised solid waste and recycling fees is that sometimes municipalities can subsidize their environmental service fund with their general fund dollars. So they're taking taxpayer money and putting it into the environmental service fund to make it so they don't need to charge revenues quite as high for that solid waste service they're providing. Now, on the private sector side, that's not the case. Most of them are, charging to be financially sustainable operations, and what we're seeing with Henderson County providers, so C&J Waste Service, McMinn's, and Mavens, they're all charging between $22 and $25 a month, and that's for recycling waste, but you provide your own bins. And then another huge piece of this study that Tom would probably not be happy with if I missed. We provide a lot of additional services at a very low cost. So we do brush pickup, we regularly help with appliance and large item pickups, and we're a very customer-friendly organization. So there are some charges that I didn't include on here, but just wanted to hit on the main revenue source, which is that residential and recycling pickup.
When you say that some of them are allowed to subsidize through the general fund, what is allowing them to do that?
They just made that choice.
That's their policy.
That's just their policy.
Yeah.
Which you could make the same decision that if you wanted to keep the rates, you could say, well, we want to keep the rates where they are, and we bring in money to shore up the environmental using general fund dollars.
Are there any questions or final comments I can help with?
I have one question, since Brian talked about, we can talk about the rates. Is that change that you put in there, is that one that could be
think that change that's proposed would generate enough revenue to get us up to doing a rate study and maybe then looking at doing a larger change and some other sort of rate structure options if we're interested in those sorts of things. But for now, I think the rate changes that are included, going to that $20 and $22 fee on the residential side and then making some tweaks to the commercial fees would be enough to get us through the immediate fiscal years coming up.
Fiscal year 25 is what Adam has for next increase.
So for you, the short run is the next 3 fiscal years. 25 is when you look at the long run.
What's that revenue, what will it produce? Is it in front of me here, that increase?
Yeah, so it's at the top of that table. So those rates, with the number of customers that we're forecasting based on those development assistance numbers, would generate in next year $1.49 million, and we're expecting to budget 1.41. So we put a little money into fund balance if the budget is 100% accurate on the revenue and the expense side.
I'm sorry, what would I guess it's $3.75. What does that generate, adding that much to it?
200,000.
About 250,000, looks like that.
250,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
kind of the equivalent of a penny
Sure, it
tax?
Yeah. Similar,
Okay.
a little higher.
Yeah, and it's also, people paying directly for what they're getting. This is not like I'm paying a penny and I don't know where the money's going.
I just wanted to get a little bit of a
Yeah.
relativity there.
It would be, we can charge sanitation fees to folks we can't necessarily charge property tax to, so nonprofits, churches, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm not suggesting that, I wanted a
Yes, sir.
comparison of what it was.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is maybe another question, but so when there are like the actual dumpsters, those are serviced like for businesses in the city? You said something about
we don't
bins, and I
provide
got
front-end,
confused.
we don't provide front-end loader service, so we don't have to go there, so they're all private.
We like Waste Pro or something.
Yeah.
Well, we do provide recycling service bins for
Yes,
some
yes,
commercial.
like for some of the restaurants and stuff, we provide the glass pickup and in some businesses in downtown, there's small rollout containers versus the dumpsters, but.
And again, a master planning effort would be really
Does the
beneficial.
city have the capability to do those?
That's part of what the master plan would be
Expanding
helpful to
our,
understand, is it a profitable return to
We should do
provide
like the
front-end
Sabrina's.
loading?
The
Yeah.
trash business worked out well for him.
Exactly. I don't know what rates you charge. I know the service level.
Well, he has been lifting weights more, so handle some of those late night calls.
Holidays are well.
So I think you guys have had your fill of stormwater, and I think I'll pass on that unless there's any question I can help with on the financial condition of the Stormwater Fund. But it sounds like you received an update on that last night, and I'm ready to turn it over to Brian.
All right, thank you, Adam. Great work on all those enterprise funds, and we'll keep updating you on this. So I know we're at, I think 7:30, 7:35. I've got general fund to cover with you. I will be as detailed or as little detail as need be. Do we need a break, Mayor, before we dive in, or do you want me to just keep going? All right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna tell the story that we've heard before, but I'm gonna highlight it again, and then we're gonna dive into some of that kind of future-facing general fund stuff that we love to look at. So from a property tax side, again, on this page, what you can see is assessed value, tax rate, and the assessed value percent change year over year for the past 20 years or so. This goes back to fiscal year 99, 2000, and the reason I chose such a long time frame is just the benefit value in the city, and we'll look a little more specifically at that in a moment, and how stable our tax rate here has been for the city of Hendersonville, and really I think adds a great quality of life and economic vitality for the city. So I'm going to pop this one out really quick. just to look at percent change. So the big changes are reval years. You can see starting out back in 99, 2000, that revaluation was a 33% change on average for the city's tax value. That's a huge change. And we'll look at what the tax rate did at that time as well. You can see it was really strong, steady growth through that time period prior to the recession. Again, I always like to give Dr. Hensley's husband kudos for giving us a reval right before the recession hit. We got a 30% increase, and honestly, that was a huge benefit to the community and carried us through the toughest years of the recession. And I know the city made a lot of investment in those years, and I think it's really paid off for the economic vitality of the community. You can see in 2011-12, that minus 7%, that's when reval happened again post-recession, and the assessors caught up and said, hey, you're not this high anymore. And ultimately, it pretty much remained stagnant until last year. And honestly, it was getting tight for us, and we all know that, and we know how important that reval was to the community maintaining good financial condition, which you saw last night reported in the audit. I highlighted that. I did provide this graph again. I'm just going to go through it quicker than it runs through itself. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, so here, this is that first reval. This is 2000. There was a 10-cent tax decrease that year. A revenue neutral tax rate would be approximately 44 cents that year. The tax rate was lowered to 45 cents from 55 cents the year before. The value of a penny then was $82,000 per penny. Our collection was about $3.6 million at 97% collection rate. The next kind of key moment in time on this storyline would be the next reval, where there was a 2-cent tax decrease to 43 cents. A revenue neutral tax rate then would have been 39 cents. So you see the community recouped some of that reval dollars for programs and services. The tax rate, again, 43, value per penny up to $110,000 a penny. Collection rate getting closer to 98%. Here's the one right before the recession. A tax decrease of 5 cents down to 38 cents per $100. A revenue neutral would have been 34 cents that year, and about $170,000 a penny. So we're gaining value, lowering the tax rate, moving into the recession here. The next item is a 3-cent tax increase. That's when we decreased in value by 6 cents. Revenue neutral would have been 41. We went to revenue neutral. So we really didn't gain anything in that year. We just maintained the same level of revenue that we were dealing with from that pre-recession level, post-recession level, excuse me. And collection dropped in those years, about 97%, with a value per penny dropping to $163,000 per penny. Here, I'd just like to highlight in fiscal year 2014 is when we actually reached pre-recession levels in our assessed value. So it took about 5 years after the recession to fully recover for the city of Hendersonville. Value per penny still going down here at $156,000 per penny. Collection rate up at 98.5%. Here in the next year in FY15, we raised taxes 3 cents for the funding of Fire Station 2 construction, a new fire engine, which is our existing fire engine 1 that you see running all over town, and also additional streets resurfacing. The tax increase that year did not cover the full cost of that debt service and the additional street resurfacing debt service and the resurfacing all in one. Again, value per penny is $157,000, about a 98% collection rate, and a tax rate here now of 44 cents, so it starts climbing back up. In 2016, the next year we had a reval. That was a pretty much flat reval. Revenue neutral would have been 43, so about the same exact penny rate, but we raised taxes 2 cents because in this year, municipalities in North Carolina lost the authority to leverage privilege license tax, which was generating about $400,000, $500,000 of annual revenue. So a strong revenue source for us was no more. They had authority no more. So we had to raise taxes on the property owners and the small businesses to compensate for some of those larger businesses that got the break. Again, our value per penny, 173,000, and collection's still about 98%. In FY18, we raised tax rate 1 cent, we're now at 47 cents to fund 2 animal control officers in the city. A 2 cent tax rate increase for 4 school resource officers. And our assessed value is less than 1% growth per year since the last reval. So again, you see this trend line. Since the recession, it was just very little assessed value growth for the city of Hendersonville. And we're at 49 cents here in FY18. We've maintained at 49 cents since then. The revenue neutral for FY20s would be 42 cents. However, there's such a high need for service demand. We held the tax rate the same and are benefiting from the increase of the value per penny, $210,000 per penny, and an estimated collection rate at 99%. We will update that number with the actual collection rate. We have not updated that yet. And so ultimately, that's where we are on the storyline for property tax. Going into this year, I've already seen some preliminary numbers for FY22. Tax values looking good. It looks like there's positive growth in the community. The real and personal property increases are positive. They haven't necessarily caught up on motor vehicles yet, but that typically lags a little bit from the personal and real property estimates. So I think we'll be in good shape, maybe a 1 to 2% increase for next year's budget, which is significant for us and helps continue to fund services. Because what you'll see on the expenditure side is we're up against a wall with retirement and health insurance benefits. Going to my favorite one is sales tax. This is busy, and I will run through this as quickly or as slowly as I need to. Ultimately, on here, see Jeff stand up, I better pick up the pace. What we see here is our collection by period, broken out by each article. We are authorized to leverage sales tax. Well, we don't actually leverage sales tax. The county leverage sales tax, and we receive a portion of it. This is FY 1920. You can see down here the percent change, and you can see in March of FY20 when the pandemic hit, our sales tax decreased 5% over the prior year. April, we decreased 7.5% over the prior year, and then rebounded on the phase reopenings, 5% increase in May over the 2019 year, and then in June, a 19% increase over the prior June of 2019. From a sales tax perspective, I've got a bunch of information here, so if the public ever wants to know about sales tax, they should have everything they need to know. But one of the key takeaways that I've been looking at is the articles and how they affect us. So we are right on the edge of per capita being good for us, or point of sale being good for us. Because remember, the sale happens here in July, it gets collected by the state, and it gets redistributed back to the counties, then redistributed again back to us 4 months later. So one of the distribution methods from the state to the counties is determined on point of sale, where the sale was made, that's where the dollar goes back to, as a percentage of total sales, or per capita, your population as a percentage of the total state population, all the other municipalities and counties in the state. So for us, and each article is different. So there's 3 main articles, 39, 40, and 42, and they're all distributed, I'm just going to pull them up, on different, if I can get the articles up, different levels. So there's 1 cent per article 39. They distribute that back to us on a point of sale method. Article 40 is a ½ cent per dollar. That's distributed per capita. And then Article 42 is another ½ cent, and that's distributed on point of sale. And so you can see here, Article 40, the black, that's a ½ cent, and that's another ½ cent equal to Article 42, but they're on 2 different methods. So you can see per capita, the black bars actually generate more revenue coming back to the city than Article 42. However, you also have to incorporate the portion that applies to food. So this full 2 cents applies to food, and then that's distributed on a half and half basis back to municipalities. So it's kind of complex how it all comes back to us.
Kind of?
Yeah. I know. But the weird thing is, you can see, for us, in the long run, point of sale is, well, we're probably, I mean, we're growing. We heard that at the beginning from a population standpoint. But the percent change numbers up here in the top right, you can see Article 39 and 42, the point of sale methods, we're increasing more annually than we are under Article 40, the 8.79%. So we're growing at a higher point of sale rate, but per capita returns more to us. It gets even more into Article 44, which was revoked by the legislature in 2007, and what they call Medicaid swap. They swapped the liability of Medicaid that counties had to cover. The state took that liability, but they also took the revenue source away from the counties. And when they did that, the counties agreed to hold cities harmless, and a portion of their sales tax every year goes to cities to fund that hole, because cities never carried the liability. So that's a portion that we have to carry. That's that blue bar that we're getting what would be Article 44 sales taxes. And in 2015, the state started talking about redistributing sales taxes. And when they did that, they actually landed on a deal that 21 counties they lost sales tax, and 79 counties gained sales tax. We were like that 78th county. So this little tiny bar here, that's what we get from that. Luckily, we're not losing money and giving it to someone else, but we pretty much broke even, and I'm sure our legislators at the time had something to do with that, and mostly the bigger communities like the Ashevilles, the Charlottes, the Raleighs, lost a lot of money, and it was redistributed to the more rural areas of the state. We landed right in the middle. I think one of my favorite things was, one of the lines from this was, the purpose of this section is to address sales tax leakage that results from different revenue-raising capacity of local option sales taxes in each taxing jurisdiction. That was the purpose of the law. So I don't really know what that means. But I'd love to learn more about it. So, digress. FY 2021 is doing really, really well for sales taxes. From December on, that's an estimate at this point based on our trending moving average. But if you look at the actuals from July through November, we're averaging 14% higher than last year. So you got to remember, so July through November of COVID, we're up 14% on average over 2019. It's a really phenomenal thing to look at when you think through sales tax in the state of North Carolina and how a community like ours is doing, especially comparatively to others. I know some of the rural counties are struggling with sales tax this year. And so ultimately, we think from a sales tax perspective, if you remember, we budgeted negatives, right? So we budgeted minus 20% for quarter 4 of FY20. We budgeted minus 10% for quarter 1, minus 7 for quarter 2, minus 3 Q3, and up 10 for quarter 4 because we were down 20 the prior year. We thought we had to, come back a little bit. So ultimately, we think we're probably going to be $725,000 to $875,000 over budget in sales tax, which is great. We also had a really strong year with getting CARES funding. Huge kudos to Samantha Reynolds and Megan Powell with the county for helping us with those applications and working through those processes. We received $600,000 there, so we're in good financial position this current year for FY21. Talk a little bit more about that later, but sales tax is a big driver of that. Lastly, there's local options out there. Unfortunately, we don't have access to any of them. Counties have access to Article 43 and 46, which are a half-cent and quarter-cent respectively. The half-cent has to be used for public transportation. The quarter-cent can be used for any approved purchase. Prepared foods taxes, which is in just special legislation approved Cumberland, Dare, Mecklenburg, Wake, and the town of Hillsborough have this 1 cent per dollar of sales on prepared foods, and that is to be spent on tourism-related expenditures. So there are options out there. I don't know if we'll ever get any, but it'd be very impactful for the city of Hendersonville to have a local option sales tax. I'll go too into this, but I probably will. So sales tax in 17-18, if you remember this year.
Didn't like this, you realize that?
Yeah.
I love
He's
this
been
one.
watching Michael too much. He's like, this is diving off head first.
trout, yeah, exactly. I'm the trash trout data in here. Sales tax was really bad in 1718, and when it first started happening, I was like, what's going on? And the second part of the distribution method, which you all are familiar with, we talked about last year, is the county distributes back to municipalities based on per capita, so by your population size, or by your tax levy ad valorem. And ultimately, we've got information on this. If you ever want to look at it, it shows the percentage that we would be at under per capita, percentage we would be at under ad valorem. It shows the tax rate change that affected each jurisdiction, and each jurisdiction's change under each method. And yeah, that's way too much. But if you ever want to know it, it's here and it's available. And the big takeaway is the per capita method does not vary as much as an ad valorem method because people's populations don't swing as drastically as tax rates. And when population or organization changes their tax rate, it affects our sales tax bottom line. Gary, you've often asked me, what's the value per penny for sales tax? So when we increase our property tax, the return on investment, if everything else stays the same, for sales tax is $77,000. So we increase property tax 1 cent, it's $210,000 property tax, it's $77,000 sales tax.
It's the craziest thing. It promotes raising your taxes. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say craziest, but it is set up so that everybody, if one person raises their taxes, everybody else has to raise theirs too.
Yeah.
The way it's set up.
And if you look at that 17-18 year, Henderson County went up 5 cents, Mills River went up 7, up 4, and we got hit hard.
Yeah, that's a crazy system.
So, yeah, all this information's here. It's great information. I'm probably the only person who cares about it.
Oh, no, it's very interesting.
We'll switch to something a little less dry. Fund balance. So, our total fund balance and our LDC unassigned fund balance is listed on this page. What you can see trended over time is that our fund balance has dropped in the years during those tough assessed value years since the recession, and we've actually started to climb back up a little. We're getting in better shape on our available percentage. I do want to highlight that because this chart does show our percent available as the green bar and the 50% of the population group average available fund balance percentage is the black bar. That is the bar we have to stay above to be able to issue debt, and we're in good shape. We're above it. We're staying above it by a couple percentage points. And then lastly, if you ever want to know how to calculate that, we have the calculation listed in this table. And for each fiscal year, we have all the data you need to make that calculation. So if you'd like, you can go do that.
Do you have somebody that's like locked in a room and they can't leave until they've been typing all this stuff in?
It's these two.
It's like, good gracious.
So, yeah,
The data entry here is mind-boggling.
even more.
It's
So
a great pandemic activity.
It's kind of fun.
I should really start off and let Adam finish, or bring Mike up in to finish, or something. This next chart's busy, but it shows personnel and benefits, and there's a lot of important information about personnel and benefits. On the left, top left here, you can see our total costs for all funds for fiscal year, right? Or we can break it down by fund and see the total costs for personnel and benefits. So starting in 15-16, our total spend on personnel and benefits was $14.2 million as a whole for the city. For FY 2021, we budgeted $19.4 million. So you can see the impact of that. What you can also see is the total personnel and benefits broken out by fund. So general fund eats up the most of personnel and benefits at 53%, water and sewer at 40%, environmental services about 5%, and then MSCs about 1%. You also can track our number of employees over time. You go back to 15-16. Well, let's see if I think I broke it. Yeah, okay, it's a little slow. We had 222 employees. Our average years of service was 9.68, so that's tenure with the city. Our average annual salary was about $42,000. Equates to about a $20 average hourly rate. Our average salary increases that year were 0.5% cost of living and 1.6% merit. minimum hourly rate, our minimum starting position started at $12 an hour. The minimum rate for a police officer started at $16 an hour, and the minimum rate for a firefighter started at $11.57 for an hour in 2016. And what you see is employee hours are based on a 2,080 hour annual year. Police officers are 2,084 hours, and firefighters are at 2,756 hours based on their shifts. Also in this, which the best thing to do on this one is look at it over time. The retirement expenses were $789,000 in 2016. The contribution rates are also listed, so you can see 6.67% for our local government employees retirement system. And we also have to contribute 7.15% for our law enforcement officers, local government employees retirement system. When you jump, and our annual health insurance premium was $5,645 per employee for those years. You jump to 1920, so this is our last audited year. We've increased to 276 employees. Our average years of service, our tenure, our experience with the city has decreased. We're at 8.18 years, average years of service. Average annual salary has gone up about $2,000 to $44,000 with average rate about $21. The minimum rates have also increased over those years. Our average salary increases have increased over those years. And then you can also see our health insurance premium is almost doubled, and our retirement expenses have almost doubled as well. These contribution rates continue to grow, and we will have, and I think we talked a little bit about that last night, we have another increase this year for our retirement contributions. So personnel and benefits is a major cost factor for the city. It's something, probably our most important cost factor for the city, and it's something we're planning for every year, and we need to be diligent about. But this is our main cost driver. So this is where all the information is on if you want to know more about specifics on health insurance or retirement, we're happy to bring them to you. We'll be building all this in. Luckily, our health insurance is stabilizing, and we should not have an increase this year. But that retirement increase, just bottom line, starts us out in the hole a couple $100,000 right off the get-go.
Why did the health insurance double?
We added, did paying for more benefits now.
And we also had some bad plan years.
That
We had-
plan years.
Our usage went up.
Double?
Remember, we added paying
Since
to
2006.
the family, we added that benefit we didn't pay for before.
So the per employee is not including their family, or
No.
that is including their family?
It's not. I have a whole lot of information on health insurance that I can share with you. We always do a memo on it every year, and it's got the trend data. It's claims driven.
Aha, I'm sorry, so
So
it's not,
that has stabilized.
It has stabilized. We had several years, 3 or 4 years, where we had high claims, some cancers, some significant illnesses that, and we got to the point that our pool also had aged to a point.
Right.
We had a previous HR director who thought it was a good idea to get all the kids off the insurance program. And that was not, in the long run, was not a smart thing to do. So we have reversed that, and we're seeing it stabilize. But
Yeah, we're doing really well. Past few years have been really good, but the years prior, then they were really bad claims years.
And is it worth ever just having the discussion to invest the money into a self-funded plan?
Yes, so we've actually been discussing that for years now with the team. And ultimately, the pool that we're in has been taking a loss on us year over year. We do not have the money to fund the cost to be self-funded. I'd love to be self-funded. It does provide stability, but you have to have the reserves to do it, and we're not there. We also looked at jumping into a different pool, and it was not the right direction to go either. It would have cost some of our benefits from our plan. So ultimately, we ended up with a 0% last year. I expect a 0% or a decrease this year for our health insurance premiums. Yes, sir.
you guys constructed this, right?
Yes.
Would it be possible just to add the inflation rate in
Yeah.
every year? So for like 2015 to 2019, 19, you can see what was the inflation for those 4 years to see how well we recover. I know we attempt to cover inflation, but just to have that as a statistic on there.
Yeah, we can add the narrative too. So just from a reference point, the COLA is, we calculate it based on the consumer price index, the implicit price deflator, and the consumer price index for the Southeast. So we're looking at 3 different kind of inflation indicators and then calculating an average off those 3 to determine the COLA for the year.
Right, yeah, I just, like, this ultimately is available to the public, right?
We will, yeah, our plans to make this available.
Yeah, I'm just saying that if you have the inflation rate, it helps look at, okay,
Yeah.
things go up or down or whatever, but it also is it meeting or not meeting inflation, or our attempt to meet inflation.
Sure. We'll have a lot of time to talk about personnel and benefits, and I want to continue the discussion on personnel and benefits. So if any other data you want to see that we need to bring to these other discussions?
I'd like to see what the minimum fire starting rate is in other comparable municipalities, cities.
Okay.
We know right where to get those.
Yeah.
We're already working on that right now.
Isn't it true with fire that someone can leave here and in a year, say go to Asheville, what county, they can be making the equivalent of an officer in some cases in a year? That
So
was
we
what-
have their plan, which we can share with you.
You know, I was gonna say it was significant that, we're losing.
Yeah, we're losing big
Yeah.
in both public safety.
Yeah, both public safety. We got some work to do.
Loud and clear. We'll dive
So,
to, yes,
I have a
sir.
question. Not that you're going anywhere, but I would assume that somebody has to be trained in how to do this stuff, should you not be available to do it. This is like a very serious data input, and it seems like you need some special training to be able to get around this thing.
We need more data scientists, yes. We need people to do data crunching, and because I mean ultimately I talk to John about this a lot. There's so many areas of the city government that are going to demand transparency by residents, businesses, and visitors in the coming years, that having tools and people who can operate the tools to show the public the good we're doing and the services we're providing, I think it establishes good faith in government, which we need a lot of.
We need a Samantha
Yes,
or Megan.
exactly.
Data scientist.
Yes.
What is that degree called in college?
So I don't know, is there a degree for that? Aaron?
Okay.
Econ, business degrees, data science degrees, yeah.
There's such thing as a data
Yeah.
science degree?
They have
Okay.
That's what young William Graham is going to work on for us. Come back.
I will mention that to him.
Our capital improvement plan is listed here. This is the existing year. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but you can, the breakout by fund is listed over fiscal year to a total cost over all our funds for 10 years, $232 million in the hopper, which is a lot of capital projects. The general fund alone is much smaller, it's 1.3 million, and included that is vehicles, equipment, to parks and other things. A couple highlights that we know are coming up is the pool needs improvement. Re-marsiting, I think is the term, and it's kind of resealing the base of the pool. That's an expensive project. That's going to be in the next year's budget request. The city hall encapsulation is a very expensive project. I think it was like $1.4 million. It's tuck and point of all the joints and improving the outside of our city hall facility. So that is on the list, and we built it into the plan. We built it in as debt service right now because I just don't know how we cover it with cash. It's the size of our existing capital plan. But we've talked about breaking it out over numerous years and just addressing different safety concerns and trying to prioritize that plan into multiple years. That's a big one. And then we just have growing equipment and vehicle needs as any local government. So those are the highlights. I'd be happy to dive into any improvements, but you're gonna see all of that at the budget workshop, when we really fine tune it and bring it back to you.
And really what I'll just mention City Hall, Tom has been working on it, but seeing the work being done on the Stillwell building at the high school, and both of these buildings were built about the same time, kind of drove home the point that, and we had some water leaks and things, and council had made it a priority to, protect this building, so Tom has done a full envelope study, so he has a report that he can share with you about recommendations on to preserve this building going forward.
That's the digging out the water and putting it back in.
At loud
I
ground.
don't want to be at work on the days that happens.
Moving into debt service, this page has all our existing outstanding principal payments for the year, interest payments for the year, interest rates for each issuance and dates for each issuance. You can break it out by fund, but I've got all the funds highlighted at this point. You can see all our outstanding debt issuance. You can see the police department headquarters has been added on here. You see the Etowah refunding revenue bond that's been added to this list. There's a couple highlights from a state revolving standpoint. We have a lot of loans associated with projects. And then our basic installment financings are typically, governmental projects or vehicles and equipment. And I'm going to talk about future debt issuances in more detail in a minute. So, any questions about our existing? All right. So we're cruising through it. I'm going to back out of this and go into our financing model for the general fund. What has been done to this model at this point is we've updated all of the income statement for the audit for FY20. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for enjoying this. We'll zoom in, so don't worry. I'm going to zoom in. I'm just giving you a broad picture. So we put in everything we know, and ultimately the big driver is some of the unknowns of our capital projects. And so right now, let's go a little bigger here. Right now, what we've built into the model is our fire engine 3 purchase, which will be delivered this year, and we'll have the financing for that in a few months. You'll see that on agenda soon. For $800,000, police department headquarters, closing for the long-term takeout with USDA in fiscal year 2022. 7th Avenue streetscape in FY 2022. Fire engine 1 replacement in FY 2022. Moving into FY 2023, this is the big unknown. I put $4 million in for City Hall and operations. Renovations, this needs to be a placeholder. The $1.3 million for just the encapsulation of City Hall is baked into this, and then just assuming what we need to do to improve customer service once police department's out of here, we've got a placeholder in there for $2.7 million for both buildings. And could be low, we really don't know at this point, so that's something we need to figure out. I've built that in for 2023. It's good to just put some placeholders in here just to make sure we're not forgetting about them and they don't fall off the list and all of a sudden creep up on us and affect our numbers. And then last couple is fire ladder 1 replacement to be funded in 2023 and fire station 1 construction to be funded in 2023. Again, all of these are very conservative. We have interest rates at 4% for all of these in 15-year terms. I think some of these would probably be able to get a 20-year term, like the fire station construction, which I also bumped to $1 million just to be conservative again. And if you remember, what this shows us is our revenue requirements to fund our base growth and these projects. And so in total by FY24, that's $1.2 million. Luckily, we're not in poor shape until FY24. But FY24, we start hitting the red indicators of either you got too much debt service to your operating expenditures, or you have dropped your fund balance below your stated policy goal. You see in FY '23, it gets pretty close here. I do want to hop over really quick to a portion here on the net earnings. You can see in FY '20, we put back about $1.1 million. FY '21, we think we'll be in good shape, another $500,000 back into fund balance. So good couple of years here, but we know this debt and these personnel demands and these growth demands are coming. FY '22 is about break even, and then FY '23 is where we kind of hit the wall. That's a $728,000 decrease in our net position that year, coming from. You'll notice I haven't added any tax increases in here, so this is assuming no tax increases. It's also assuming a 15% reval recovery in FY '24. Previously, we had a plan for a 6-cent tax increase this upcoming budget. However, based on our good financial condition, we're really not going to need that until FY '23. In FY '23, really, we're only going to need 3 cents. So we've got some flexibility about how we space this out. One other thing I forgot to mention that's included in here is the safer grant costs that are increasing year over year. So all of this is baked into this model. And so ultimately, we have flexibility, which is a good thing, but we have a lot of growing demands. And I think John's going to close us out talking a little bit about that before we lead into tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of personnel requests. We're going to have a lot of growth. We're going to have all these benefit costs, and we need to be ready for it. And we have this debt load that's sitting out there. So, we can 3 cents this year and 3 cents this year, and we're in a pretty good position. That gets up 55 cents per $100 of value. That's still well in line with our comparables, but we just need to think about it as we move into it. Right now, we're looking good for FY '22 budget. It doesn't mean it's going to end well, because the requests always come in really high, and it's going to be a give and take of understanding where council wants to be from a tax side compared to a service level, employee benefit, and project side of the house. So we have the information. We can figure out where we want to be, and we're prepared to work it out as we go through. So with that, does anyone want to dive into any more of this detail? Lindsay's done.
I'm happy you just threw some numbers up and the red things went down. That's good.
Yeah.
Appreciate you doing that.
If tax increases were only that easy. So John, I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to you, and we just pulled together just a picture for the end, just to think about what our community fabric, what it entails, and how we move forward building that good community fabric.
So it's an interesting time. Brian's giving you a lot of numbers, things that the unknowns out there. Like I'll go back to 2 years ago we told you we're going to have to raise the tax rate 5 or 6 cents this year, right? Well, projects have been delayed. Our revenue's doing well, so it doesn't look like we're going to have to do that. But at least based on what we know, but we've got to put all the inputs in there. There may be some decisions that we have to make that we do want to do a portion of that, but we're not where we were. I say that because things change, but also things are coming down the road. The growth is coming. Our level of service demands are continue to increase and go up. The stress on our staff continues to go up. There's some pent-up demand in some of our departments that have not in the past asked for additional personnel when they probably should have. But there's a lot of things changing in the community, and there's a lot of great things about the community. We're in a great position, and there's a lot of people in this state that want to be where we are. I'll just say that at least. I talk to other managers and look at other places. There's a lot of people that want to be like Hendersonville, North Carolina. So the next 4 or 5 months, we're going to have a lot of work to do. We're going to have a lot of discussions, and we need your guidance. And you've got priorities that you want to accomplish. And I think the balance is, how do we maintain the high quality of life that we have in the environment? Because we can't put up a wall. I mean, let's just face it. There's just no way that you can. We can talk about slowing things down, but you can't put up a wall. Again, it's a great community. People want to be here.
some we're gonna have natural growth, that's not necessarily, some of that is built in, but not all of it's built in. So, we're gonna have to take it one year at a time, try to do the best we can to predict, and go forward. But I think we're in a good spot, we're in a good financial spot now. We've got good data, so I feel good about where we are, but there's still work to be done. So, and there's still priorities and expectations from the public. So we've laid the groundwork. I look forward to tomorrow. Look forward to talking about values, but then getting into some of your big ideas and what you want to see in the community, and just see where we go from there. So, but it's as I told one of our departments today during a budget meeting, it's a big puzzle that we have to put together every year, and we're starting that puzzle. We're getting right now we've got the border up. Now we've got to put the puzzle together in the middle to make it work. So we've got the outside of it, so we've got to build the middle. So we just appreciate the support and the input, and we will go forward over the next 3 or 4 months to build a budget that you want to build. So. And that, Mayor, that is all
That
we
was
got.
the closer.
Yeah, the picture just changes.
It's in your.
I'll work commercial.
John.
Everyone's been inside.
Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to add this evening?
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That was as painless as you can make it. And entertaining too.
Okay. Well, we are not adjourning, we are recessing until our Zoom meeting tomorrow morning. There is a link printed out, or you can go onto the city's website, I'm assuming, or Facebook page, and you can just click on it there. And we will start around 8:30 tomorrow morning. And it will all be virtual, we will not be together for this one. Okay? Have a good rest tonight.